Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and in this video I wanted to share with you 9 cichlids that I think can fit well in a community fish tank. I hope you enjoy the video, and by the way, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We do a lot of videos just like this. We do species profiles, fish room, fish store tours, a lot on water chemistry, and fish tank filtration. And with over 70 fish tanks in our fish room, we've always got something cool going on. So we are going to be taking a look at the 9 best cichlids I think can fit well into a community aquarium. The shots that you're looking at right here are some of the really cool aquascapes from the aquatic experience. They're not my tanks, but we're going to be looking at some of these really cool cichlids that I think will really fit in well to most community aquariums. There are some assumptions that we're going to be making here, and that is sometimes we have to do a little bit of homework on specific species to make sure they're fitting in with the fish that we already have. Also, as we go through this video, I'm going to start with some smaller, easier cichlids, and we're going to work our way up into some larger, not necessarily more difficult, but certainly some larger cichlids that still fit really well into a community aquarium. It's just going to take a little bit more space. As we get into the larger aquariums, again, we have to assume that we have fish that are the appropriate size for these larger cichlids so that the fish aren't being eaten. But in all cases, these cichlids, I have found that they are pretty easygoing. They don't terrorize other fish, and they're just really, really cool. So I'm going to give you some really awesome examples. Now, when it comes to cichlids, I would recommend, especially if you're a beginner, to look at a couple different things. First, if you're going to buy a showpiece, centerpiece fish for your fish tank and you're thinking about a cichlid, if you do it, if you buy them in a pair, you could potentially introduce some issues. And that is, if you get a male and a female, they could potentially breed, and when that happens, all bets are off. They're going to want to protect their fry, so they could be a little bit rough on the other inhabitants of your tank. If you get multiples, especially multiple males, and the tank isn't very large, they could potentially spar with one another. And if you get more than one of these fish on this list at the same time in the same tank, they could also vie a little bit for dominance in the fish tank. So if you're a beginner, and or you've got a smaller tank, my recommendation would be just get one of these cichlids, let it be the showpiece, let it be the centerpiece of your community tank, and then as you gain more experience, you can always add more. As you get a larger tank, you can always add more. And by the way, if you're looking for cichlids for very specific setups, for instance, we've done videos on cichlids for planted tanks, cichlids for beginners, cichlids for small tanks. I'm going to put all of those links in the description below so you can get a better idea. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the really cool cichlids that are out there for your community tank. So let's start on the smaller side. This is a really cool fish. We've had these in the fish room before, Acara anomala. These are actually from a fish room tour I did, a creative pet keeping's fish room. I believe right now these fish, as you're seeing them, are in maybe a 10-gallon, could be a 20, I don't remember. But these fish stay relatively small. They get a lot of really nice color. They tend to darken up a little bit if you put them on darker substrate. Definitely a fish if you've got a smaller tank, like maybe a 20-gallon high or a 20 long, that could fit in really nicely in your community tank. Again, if you get a pair or multiples, they may be a little bit rough on one another, although you can see them here. They're being kept in a relatively small tank and they're doing fine. But if they're breeding, all bets are off. The other one, and I know this is somewhat common, are the kribensis. There are different types of kribensis. We're looking at a few different types right here, but these are great fish. Now, one of the interesting things about these fish, again, if you've got a 20-gallon or above in a community tank, if you've got a male or a female, they could look really, really nice in your tank. I personally feel that these fish, however, are better. They show a lot nicer color when you either have a pair like you're seeing right now, or if you've got multiple males and or females in a tank. We had at one point like a dozen of these fish in a 75-gallon community tank, and oh my goodness, the colors on the fish were absolutely fantastic, especially the females. They got a deep purple belly, and the males would show off, and it was just such a dynamic thing to look at in a tank. Really, really cool. But again, if you're on the smaller side for your fish tank, maybe just get a male or a female. The other option that we have are the apistos. Apistos are amazing fish. Now with the apistos, we're dealing with a fish that if you're, especially when you think about water parameters, if you're somewhere right around neutral to slightly less, these fish are really going to thrive in that water. Now for us, we've got Apistos in our fish room as well, and our pH is actually about an 8.2, and they're doing well there, but I do think they do better when you've got a pH closer to neutral. And there are so many different types, and the cool thing is, like the fish I have shown you so far, they don't get very big. You're looking at a few inches for the males, slightly smaller for the females, and often they both get some really nice color. The tank that you're looking at here was actually from the Aquatics last time it was in Chicago. They had this sort of kind of low boy set up with a few different species of Apistos, and they are just awesome fish. And they're generally going to fit in pretty well in a community tank. And again, if you're somewhere in that 20 gallon or above, you're going to be in good shape. If you've got a larger tank, you can keep more of them. If your tank's on the smaller side, like I keep saying, maybe just keep one. The really cool thing is if you get some of the really nicer males, they're going to show amazing color. And again, they're going to be fine with plants. They're going to be fine with the smaller fish. So maybe you've got some tetras or some rasboras or a honey gourami. They're probably going to do really well there. Now, if you've got something like live bears, guppies, they may pick off the fry once in a while. All the fish that I'm showing you right now would probably not be good with shrimp, and some of them may or may not be really good with snails. The fish that we're looking at here, this is my favorite Apisto. This is Apistogramma panduro. This particular setup was done when we were at Aquatic Clarity, Jeff Michael's fish room, and I saw these fish and I had to have them. We wound up getting them in our fish room as well. This is the female here, which shows really great color. She's protecting fry. When we look at the tank a little bit closer, they were the females protecting the fry. The males and females, absolutely positively fantastic color. And that's the cool thing about Apistos is you're really getting that centerpiece or showpiece fish. This is our Apistogramma panduros in a 20 long. You see them here, they're on gravel. They can be on gravel or sand, whatever you prefer, but they're both really cool fish. I think another really solid consideration if you're looking for a cichlid that's going to fit in a community tank, of course, are the rams. And again, just like the Apistos, there are different types. There are the electric blues and the golds and the traditional German blue rams. And what you're seeing right here in this really cool setup that I saw at the Aquatic Experience. And then we also have the Bolivian rams. Now, I did a species profile on Bolivian rams. I think personally, at least for us, those are the easiest rams to keep healthy and keep going for long periods of time. Sometimes, at least in my experience, some of the German blue rams or the derivatives have been a little bit more finicky, but those particular rams would enjoy a pH that's round neutral or slightly less. The other fish that you could be looking at, of course, are the angelfish. Now we're starting to get into fish that are a little bit larger. So here we're looking at one of my 125s. This was a display at the Chicago Aquatics. And you can see here a lot of angelfish, but these are fish that, again, I would prefer to see in a larger tank, somewhere maybe 40 gallon breeder or 55 gallon or above. They can get really tall, and I think when we see them and they're small and they're tiny at a pet store, we don't fully appreciate just how big they can get. In our 150, we've got a rather large angelfish that's probably from the top of their fin to the bottom, somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 6 or 7, maybe 8 inches. So if you're putting them in a smaller tank like a 20 or even a 29 long term, that may not be the best thing for them. They tend not to be super aggressive, although some angelfish, all cichlids can, some of them can be somewhat aggressive, but angelfish for the most part are not. Now, when it comes to angelfish, you're going to want to think about your tank mates because they can be prone to being fin nipped. So if you've got a tank, let's say, full of tiger barbs, maybe that's not a good mix, especially if your angelfish are of the longer fin variety. This is a fish, again, if you get multiples like you're seeing here and they start to breed, they're going to want to protect the area in which their eggs are laid and the fry are inhabiting. So this is definitely a fish, especially if you're a beginner, maybe just get one and just let it be a showpiece fish. And I know they're relatively common, but again, we're looking at these amazing fish that can be part of a larger community. And I think one of the cool things about cichlids that people appreciate so much is their personality. The fact that when you walk into the room, there's just something about them that they look like they know you're there, they recognize you, and they just have a little bit more personality. Again, the fish that you're looking at here are wild angels that were part of the Jeff Michael's Aquatic Clarity tour that I did. Definitely check out some of the fish room tours that we've done. Some absolutely amazing fish, but angelfish can be a great addition. Want to throw something out there a little bit unusual. This is Cryptoheros nanoluteus. This is a 29 gallon that you're looking at. These are our fish. This is a group of them that we've had in a 29 for quite some time. I have found them to be relatively relaxed, although they can be somewhat aggressive. And this is certainly a fish I would only, especially if I'm a beginner, I would only want to keep one of them in my community tank. But they seem to, for the most part, to ignore other fish. And they're really awesome. You can see the nice deep blue eyes. And this is a fish that really responds to substrate color. The darker the substrate, the darker they're going to be. And this is a fish where I would recommend having a roughly neutral substrate like you're seeing here. If you go too dark, they start to get a little bit muddied up. If you go too light, they still look nice, but maybe not quite the same. Electric blue Acara, again, this is a larger fish. What we're looking at here is a 40-gallon breeder. Since we took this shot, all of our electric blue Acara have moved to a 125. They can get a little bit larger. And so you're looking at somewhere around 6 inches or so, and they're very thick-bodied fish. I have found them to be relatively non-aggressive. I have also found them to be of amazing color and also pretty healthy. Sometimes you get the electric blue varieties of some fish, and they're not 100% healthy, but in this particular case, they are really, really healthy, really nice looking fish. Again, in this case, you want to make sure you don't have really tiny rasboras or really small neons, because larger fish eat smaller fish regardless of how aggressive they are. It's just something they often do, just something to keep in mind. Now, this is a fish that I really, really love, and that is the Severum. We've done a species profile on Severums, just like we've done a species profile on electric blue Acara. Those will be in the description below. Severums are fantastic fish. They've been called the poor man's discus in the past. I just think they hold their own against any fish. Here we're looking at a red shoulder Severum in our 150. These are large fish, and there's no doubt that we're going to want at least a 75 gallon to house these fish long term. We've got many varieties in our fish room. This is actually a fish store tour that we did here. These are not ours, but we've had red shoulders and greens, and we've had the red spotted gold Severums and all kinds of different types, and they are absolutely fantastic fish. This is a Severum that we looked at when we did Rick's fish room tour. Again, just absolutely amazing. He had a large group of them in a 125, but again, for the most part, these fish are relatively laid back, although I have found, at least in my experience, the green Severums tend to be a little bit more aggressive than what I've seen with the golds and the red shoulders. That could just be my experience. Would love to hear from you in the comments section below if you experience the same thing when keeping Severums. But one of them in a larger tank could certainly be a really cool thing if you're looking at a larger community tank. The only thing I will tell you though is if you're looking at plants, this is not going to work out very well. They have eaten every single green thing I have ever put in a fish tank. Also, they, believe it or not, like to eat snails. So if you've got mystery snails in a tank, just be careful. But if you have a problem with pest snails, I have fed these fish snails for quite some time, and every time I put snails in the tank, they like to eat them. So really beautiful, really majestic fish, but you do need a larger tank, a larger community tank in this case, probably 75 gallons or above. And I've saved my favorite for last, and that is the Geophagus. You're looking at Geophagus altifrons here in our 150 with the same tank that has our Severums. I love Geophagus. They are, for the most part, relatively peaceful in a community tank, especially if you just have one. If you've got a group, you're going to want a larger tank. Now, not all Geophagus are super peaceful. We've had Geophagus brasiliensis, which can be a little bit more aggressive. Here you're looking at Geophagus tapajos in a 55 gallon. For the most, the Geophagus tapajos, they stay a little bit smaller, so a 55 or above is probably sufficient. But some of the other Geophagus that can get 8, 9, 10 inches or slightly larger, you might want to think about an even larger tank, like a 75 gallon or above. But the point is, we've kept many, many different types of Geophagus, and every single time we have, they have been really good inhabitants of a community type of fish tank, whether it's been with larger tetras or gouramis or, just our standard types of fish. But again, usually want them to be a little bit on the larger side. Again, we're dealing with Geophagus that can be, 6, 7 to 10 inches or more. So you want larger community fish at this point, but they are absolutely a fish where if you're looking for some really awesome color, really awesome finish, and something that's just going to stop people at the fish tank and say, wow, what is that? These are the types of fish. Ones that I recommend, the tapajos are awesome. The altifrons that you saw earlier is really pretty. Geophagus weinmilleri is an absolutely fantastic fish. Geophagus surinamensis, if you can find them, but really, really cool. Highly recommend them. All right, everyone, so those are just some ideas of cichlids that you could potentially put in a community fish tank. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.